This is the episode I wish I had when I hit rock bottom. As you can see, I just moved. Everything is in boxes. I don't even have a studio set up yet. But this week still matters. So instead of skipping, I'm giving you something a little bit different. This is a collection of moments. Some of them dark, some of them lonely, but all of them triumphant. And all of them with a silver lining. These are my rock bottom and back again stories. The ones that truly forged me. So if you've ever felt lost, exhausted, stuck in a pit, this episode is for you. If I can make it out, anyone can. And so perhaps I can show you along the way. These stories are proof of that. So I hope you enjoy them. Sometimes we don't choose who to love, but we can choose how to love. Over the course of me telling my story, you've heard a lot about me. You've heard a lot about my kids. You've heard a lot about a lot of people. And you've heard a little bit about this person. The one person you really haven't heard enough about yet is really one of the main, if not the main central character. And that is my ex-wife. Her name was Danielle, and I loved her. I loved her enough to marry her. So I want to tell that story because regardless of everything that happened after that, regardless of where that road ended up taking us, at one point, we definitely loved each other. And I would argue that there's still, in some ways, love there. So, how did we get there? We started dating April 6th of 2018. We got married June 27th of 2009. A lot of crazy, interesting things that happened in there. A lot of things that, looking back now, should have been red flags. But I was in love. I felt like I was in love for the first time. And because I didn't really have any of the preparation growing up, I didn't have any history or experience with relationships, I thought that this is just the way that they were supposed to go. Like, you deal with these things. You deal with these difficulties. You deal with stuff in people's past, and you move on and you keep going forward. And if God puts the right person in front of you, right, you're supposed to marry that person. Because the whole thing about where I grew up, it wasn't just that we weren't supposed to date. It's like you're not really supposed to even engage in a relationship with someone unless you feel like they could more than likely be the one that you're supposed to marry. So I had that in my mind. So I'm like, I started a relationship with this girl and compound that with the fact that we had screwed up sexually. It created this bond. So I thought that I was duty bound to stay with her, even with the red flags that I saw. I thought these are just things that I'm supposed to work through. This is the way relationships go. Because I didn't have the experience, we almost broke up a few times. There were some other things that were pretty significant as far as the relationship goes, but we got married. So I graduated from chiropractic school in 2008. I got married in 2009. We had our first kid in 2010. We had our second kid in 2011. And we had our third kid in 2012. So it was a busy, busy time. And over the course of all those years, yes, we had some difficulties in our marriage. We had some difficulties in our relationship, but we loved each other. Was I the greatest leader? No. Did we make a lot of mistakes? Yes, but we loved each other. And eventually, well, you know how the story turned out. I don't want you to get the idea that my ex-wife was only some wicked, evil monster. I met her. We fell in love, we got married, and we had 3 beautiful children together. And then things went sideways. She gave me the greatest gift of my life outside of my salvation in Christ, and that is my 3 children. And so I'm forever thankful. And there's a piece of me that still loves her, and there's a piece of me that really, like, Danielle, if you're out there, I still pray for you. I still want you to get your life together. I still want you to surrender completely to Jesus and be able at some point to have a relationship with your children. My sister and her husband, her name is Ann, his name is Judd. They're two of the best people that I know in the entire world. And not just because of what they did for me and for my kids. They're just two of the best people that I could ever even think of. And they stepped up when I couldn't. And they provided something that I wasn't able to provide for. And they were doing that for a period of time. And eventually they did it permanently by adopting my kids. And so my kids are permanently and legally their children. Their last name is different. They call them mom and dad, rightfully so, because they've been their parents longer than I ever was. I'll always be Daddy Drew to my kids, but my sister will be mom, and my brother-in-law Judd is dad. And that's just the way that it is, and that's the way that it should be. My kids are just as much a part of their family as their own kids. There is no distinction. Their kids see my kids as brothers and a sister, just as much as anybody else. And it's the same for us when we're adopted into God's family. We are just as much a part of God's family as is Jesus Christ. We are adopted, and that is a special thing because he chose us. So what's the bigger picture here? First thing I want to do is say, Anne and Judd, I honor you, and I thank God for you today and every single day for the way that you were able to step up when I wasn't able to. You became the parents. You became my kids' parents when I couldn't parent them, and you provided them a better life than perhaps I ever could have, especially in the state I was in when it happened. You stepped up and you were like, we'll take on 3 more kids. We'll double the size of our family. And you did the right thing. And I'm sure it's been hard. I'm sure it's been difficult. And I'm sure there's going to be plenty of difficult times ahead. But I know that with you guys leading the way as their parents, and with me being as involved with their lives as I can, that those kids are going to grow up and become 3 awesome human beings, 3 awesome children of God. And it's not always easy for me to accept. There are days when I don't know that I can handle it. But then I remember who they're being raised by, and they're being raised by you, Ann and Judd, and they're being raised by God. And I can't imagine a better family to be a part of than yours and his. So I honor you today.
Richard was kind of wild. He was hilarious. He was a derelict devil. There was a reason that we nicknamed him Berserko. But beneath the jokes and adventures, there was pain, a profound amount of deep pain. Today, I want to tell you about the friend I knew, the kid who made us laugh until we cried, the man who didn't get the help that he needed, and maybe, just maybe, through his story, someone else will get the chance to make a different choice, to have a different ending to their story. Before the darkness took over, before all the headlines, there was just Richard. And if you knew him back then, you knew the kind of guy who made every story just a little wilder. Richard wasn't just one story. He was 1,000 little moments, some hilarious, some heartbreaking, and some, sadly, will never get to fully understand this side of eternity. He was shot in a standoff with police in the same small town where we grew up, right across from the street, right across from the church that we attended when we were kids, right where he used to ride his bike as a kid, right where he learned how to drive, and right where his daughter stood watching the whole thing go down. I don't know every detail. I don't need to, and I probably never will. What I do know is that anytime you have bullets being exchanged between a man and law enforcement, something has already gone deeply, tragically, horribly wrong. But this isn't where I speculate. This isn't where I make a judgment. This is where I grieve. Because no matter what happened that night, I know that the pain that led up to it didn't start there. It had started years, if not decades earlier, in wounds that never healed, and questions that never got answered, and demons that were never dragged into the light. And that little town where we all grew up, it got a little quieter, a little sadder, a little less berserko, but a little more haunted by the silence that we all kept for way too long. There are so many stories that I and everyone around there could tell about Richard. Some are reckless, some are sacred, and some I'll carry with me to my grave. But here's what I keep coming back to. Richard didn't have to go out like this. He wasn't evil. He wasn't worthless. He was hurting. Yes, he made some mistakes, but he was a man with a deep spirit, a wild heart, and a war going on inside of him that he never quite figured out how to fight. And yeah, he made plenty of mistakes, plenty of big mistakes. But behind every reckless decision was a question he never found the answer to. Am I okay? Do I matter? Is there a way out of this mess? The truth is, he didn't need to go it alone. But somewhere along the way, he stopped believing that help was even possible.
There's 3 types of business in this world. There's your business, there's other people's business, and then there's God's business. Your actions, your choices, and your decisions are yours to take care of. And that takes up a good chunk of your life. That's the stuff that you can control. And then there's all these choices and decisions and actions that are other people's business. And they directly affect you every day. But I think that I can control them because they're people that are directly in my sphere of influence. But it doesn't really matter. If you've ever dealt with addicts, you know that you can say all the right things and do all the right things around them, but they're still going to make their own decisions. We're actually all in some ways like that. But it's particularly in the circumstances I was in, there was a whole lot of things that other people were doing that were affecting me, that I had no control over, but I just had to find peace with. I could only handle what was my business. So there was my business, there was other people's business, and then there was this other big category that's God's business. And that is stuff that I don't even have any kind of influence over at all, because God's business is God's business. I can pray, and I can ask God for things, and I can ask Him to help me. But there are certain things that only He can control. There are certain outcomes, certain things in the future that only He can determine the outcome. And yes, He uses people to accomplish these things. But there's no way that I can affect those. I can affect my business primarily, and I can have some influence on other people's business, but I still have to learn to let that go. And I still have to remember whose name is going to be on that tombstone. Only I can determine what's worthy to be put on that tombstone. Yeah, people can put whatever they want to on it. They can call me the biggest asshole in the world. But deep down, I would know.
Have you ever found yourself in a situation you never could have imagined? In a pit so dark you couldn't even see, and so deep your hands couldn't even reach the top? You have a vague recollection of how you got there, but no idea of how you're going to get out. Well, that's where I was in the summer of 2016. Was wandering up and down the streets of Spokane, wearing only a pair of flip-flops, gym shorts, and a tank top. It was 95 degrees outside, so I had to walk in various places and beg them just to get a drink of water. I was so hungry that I walked into a donut shop and begged for their day-old donuts. And by the grace of God, they gave them to me. And they weren't great donuts, but that day, they tasted like the best donuts in the world. You see, both my cars were locked up in impound. My kids were living with my sister. And my ex-wife was God knows where. I was high on some kind of drugs or multiple different drugs. And I was literally just wandering back and forth along the streets, hoping to run into someone I know or find some kind of stroke of luck. I had no idea where I was going to sleep that night. I had no idea what I was going to do, but I was completely lost and broken inside. I never in my wildest dreams ever imagined that I'd be in a place like this. But here I was. I wasn't sure if I was crying or if I was sweating, but I finally just broke down. And I remember eating those stale donuts and reaching into my phone and making sure that I had just enough charge left to make a phone call to my brother. I called him and I gave him the rundown. And it was at that moment that he said to me, I kind of had an idea this phone call was coming. I'm not shocked by it. I was suspicious of it for a very long time, but I'm glad you finally said something. So it didn't surprise him. He knew something was up because we're twins and we pick up on those things from each other. He said, I have an idea. Let me go make a few phone calls and I'll call you back. So I hung up the phone with him and I kept wondering, again, still not knowing where I was going to stay that night. And I called my mom and I told her what was going on. Again, she wasn't shocked because she kind of knew the direction my life had been going. Anyway, I got off the phone with my mom and my brother called me back and he said, hey, so here's the deal. He said, me and Chanel agreed that you can come and stay with us, and me and Dad, we're gonna buy you a bus ticket. You just tell us when. And because I was still fighting inside, because I wasn't sure that I was at the bottom. I wasn't quite sure that this was the end. I was like, all right, well, I'll let you know, because I was still clinging on to some way that I thought that I could maybe make this work, that I could somehow claw my way out of that by myself. So if even one of those stories resonated with you, please like and share the video and drop your favorite in the comments. I'll talk to you later.
So if you like this content, please give it a rating, a review, and share it with your friends. Also, if you'd like to learn a little bit more about me and what I'm all about and what I can maybe do for you, check out my website at thedangerousgentleman.org. That's thedangerousgentleman.org. Thank you for listening.